Hey everyone, Andrew here, and today I'm doing another top 5. It is the start of a new year, that being 2019, so I take a look at the films that I saw in 2018 and give you my top 5 best and my top 5 worst. I was a little hesitant to do this list right away because I did the one for last year for 2017, and I am a week after I finished that list, I watched a 2017 movie that was easily the worst movie I'd seen from that entire year. It was absolutely horrible movie called Table 19, which was basically about the losers table at a wedding where it's just the friends of the friends of the friends who we just felt obligated we had to send an invite, but we don't want them there. And starred Anna Kendrick, and she had 2 love interests, and one was getting married. And we didn't know that till right after his wedding, or right before. And then the other love interest is absolutely horrible human being who deserves to die. And let's see who she ends up with. Oh, it's the one that we've been told the entire movie is an absolutely horrible being and he deserves to die. Yay! Yeah, it was a dramedy that had almost no comedy. Actually, it had no comedy as far as I'm concerned. And the drama was tripe and ridiculous and horrible. Just failure on all accounts. So I didn't want to have a repeat of that this year, but I kept up on the movies for 2018 and made certain I watched all of the ones that I could get my hands on that I actually had some interest to see before I made the list. And that's a good thing I did because my number one changed. Even though the one that is not my number one maybe should have been. I'll let you know when that happens, but right now I'm going to be doing the top 5 worst movies of 2018. Now, 2018 was an interesting year because there wasn't that much bad this year. I mean, there was not a lot of there was some amazing stuff. There was a lot of pretty good stuff. There wasn't a lot of god awful stuff. I mean, there were some bad ones, and I will be talking about some of those. A lot of them just made my honorable mentions, though. So we'll start with number 5. 1517 to Paris, or the 317 to Paris, or 1517 to Paris, whatever you want to call it. Basically, it's a story of 3 friends, 2 of which were military trained, taking down a lone terrorist on this train that was threatening to kill people. And literally, that's all you need to know about this story. But there's so much more that is completely unimportant. There's a number of other flaws with it. The number one flaw with this movie, though, is kind of that they chose to cast the actual people to play the roles of the people. So the 3 friends are the actual 3 friends, and they're just reliving their events that happened to them on this, and what led them up to this. Okay. Yeah, having non-actors, 3 of them, as your main characters, that's kind of tricky, but if you have a really good director who can work alongside, it's Clint Eastwood, who can direct himself and occasionally some other people, but not necessarily known for doing well with non-actors. Okay. The weird thing is, though, is that the 3 guys in this, alright. They're not great, but they're better than some of the actual actors in this movie. Like, there's 2 women who play the moms in this that are horrible. They're just really badly written, really badly performed. I think the other part of this is that it's all preamble. It's all what led them to being on the train on that day and what their training and the stuff that happened with that. It's all flashback, but none of it is really interesting or compelling or even important to the story. It's like you start out with them as kids, and it's like, oh, they played with guns and were obsessed with becoming soldiers. And then they stayed friends, even though they all went apart and went to different states. Then 2 of them joined the military. One of them trying to become a parajumper because someone told him it was cool. And then realizing he's not physically capable of doing that part. so having to do something else, and the third friend kind of gets pushed off to the side because he doesn't do anything interesting for those years, apparently. We don't know. And then the event happens, and yeah, it's like we get to know almost nothing about the characters, even though we see like the whole lifestyle. We don't know anything about them or why they are the way they are or any of that stuff. We know nothing about the terrorist or what was going on with that at all. It wasn't shot in an interesting way. It wasn't edited in an interesting way. There's nothing about this movie that's really compelling. It's one of those stories that works better as a Wikipedia article or as a news thing of going, hey, terrorists attacked this, but three plucky young men stopped it. It's like, okay, that's all I need to hear. I don't need to know their entire life story. Yeah, not the worst thing out there, but just really really dull and really uninteresting. The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. Well, anyone surprised this one sucked? I'm not. It's literally one of those things where you're like, okay, Disney, please, please, Disney, stop trying to recreate Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. I know that made you a lot of money. I know it was very successful. Every single time you've attempted it since then has flopped hard. And no one really even particularly likes the Alice in Wonderland Tim Burton version anymore. It has fallen way on the offskirts where no one likes it. No one even went to see the sequel, which was alright. And the annoying thing is that the Nutcracker is a story that you could do some stuff with. There's some interesting concepts into it, and the looking at it of a little girl who may or may not be losing her mind, getting stuck in this war between the toys and the mice king who wants to destroy this prince. But very little that's in this. Like, there is a girl, there is a war, but there's no real mice king. There's barely a Nutcracker. Which is one of the things that really drove me nuts, is that you have this young African-American man playing the Nutcracker, who looks nothing like a Nutcracker, is nothing like a Nutcracker, and it's like he doesn't even do a job that could warrant being called the Nutcracker. It's just the title that he is given for being a bridge guard is so stupid. And then you have the traveling to this realm, and it's ridiculous and over the top, and the effects gone crazy. And there's this person who we think is evil, but you can kind of tell almost right away is going to be the not evil. And then you got this person who's good, but then you listen to her and her ideas, and you're like, oh, nope, she's probably going to be evil. Okay, which is amazing considering she has a super squeaky voice and talks like a sugar plum fairy, because she is. Badly told, badly written. There were some parts of it that kind of work effect-wise. Some of the thinking and the ideas behind it is really interesting. I like the ideas of the realms, that they're all kind of based on something. The land of flowers, the land of ice, the land of candy, and the land of destroyed circus equipment? Flowers, candy, and circus equipment kind of works. Ice is the weird one there, kind of. It's like, you couldn't be toys or something, Then there's this whole thing about using tin soldiers because they have no soul, which sounds like a meta-commentary on using, unmanned drones kind of thing, but I don't know. It's very boring, very predictable, very poorly told, poorly acted. You got a couple little CGI moments that are kind of cool, but for the, you got Helen Mirren playing this kind of interesting character, but she's barely in the movie, and it would have been more interesting if she'd been given a better part. But, yeah, no, it's literally just Alice in Wonderland, but Nutcracker. So yeah, no, that one was pretty bad. The Happy Time Murders. This one for me is probably my biggest disappointment of the year. This is one that I thought had potential to be something really interesting and really creative. I mean, an R-rated puppet cop movie where you could have done lots of violence and lots of swearing and done something super graphic and super creative, and the entire thing ends up feeling censored. Like, or that they just didn't have any really creative ideas or anything really interesting to say or do with this. It's literally just a buddy cop movie, except that the partner, instead of being a different nationality or a different sex, they're a puppet. And then you got all this stuff about puppets that are just being misused and mistreated. It reminds me a bit of Bright, that Netflix movie about the fairies and the trolls that starred Will Smith, where it's like this concept has something to it. You could do something with this, and instead you just do generic cop drama. That's kind of what you get from this. You get generic, boring cop drama from this. It's supposed to be a comedy, but it's really not that funny. The best joke in the entire thing is in the trailers, which is just after the main puppet character has had sex, he ejaculates silly string all across the room. That's the best joke in the entire thing, and that barely got a laugh out of me. Melissa McCarthy's in this, and she is given the role of the straight character. So she has to play serious character to the not that funny puppet character. Or it might be reversed. I don't know. Neither of them are funny in this movie. Not really. And there's really nothing all that funny about this one. I think the funniest thing about it is that Melissa McCarthy's character has had her liver replaced with a puppet liver. So now she's a sugar addict. And obsessed with maple syrup. So she'll chug bottles of maple syrup like it's alcohol. And that's sort of interesting. It's not funny, but it's sort of interesting. Like, one of the few things that I actually did like about this, or I thought was kind of funny, was the idea of Muppet porn. That there was this puppet that was a Dalmatian dog and had a fireman chained to her bed and was just, like, doing this weird reverse roles of, like, I'm gonna take you for a walk, and I'm gonna pet you, you like when I do this? And it's just like this weird, like, the am I looking at thing? But it was the most interesting thing in the entire movie because it was just so confusing. Fun fact about this movie, or about me watching this movie, is I saw it with someone on a first date. And yeah, we both kind of regretted seeing the movie, kind of. But we're still dating, so something good came out of it, I guess. But yeah, it's one of those it's one of those movies where, like, I wish we'd sign it on, like, our third or fourth date, because we could just spend the whole time making out instead of watching it. Instead, we were just stuck there beside each other, staring at this weird train wreck of a movie that could have been interesting. Could have done something with it. Instead, everyone plays it too straight. It's not played for laughs. It's not over the top enough. It's not pushing the envelope. It doesn't even necessarily need the R rating it has. The only thing it does kind of have going for it is a mystery. And the mystery isn't that hard to figure out. Happy Time Murders is definitely worth a skip. Annihilation. This is one that, when I saw it, I knew I was gonna hate it. Alright, well, I knew I was gonna be one of my least favorite films of the year. But I also wasn't planning to put it on this list at all. Because I knew part of it was just the way I went into it, and that it didn't speak to me, and that it was just not what I was looking for. But it's like, to me, there's a difference between movies I hate and worst movies of the year. Because every once in a while, Facebook will do a list where it's like, Nate, what is the worst movie you've ever seen? And I'll see people put things like Lord of the Rings and Signs and these other movies, and it's like, it's like I always look at those going, you guys have clearly not seen enough movies if you think the worst films ever made are Lord of the Rings and Signs. They might be your most hated movies. They might be the movies you dislike the least. But there's a difference between hating something and it actually being the worst. I hate 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is a lot like Annihilation, unfortunately. But it's like, because to me, 2001: A Space Odyssey is very slow, very boring, and has nothing going for it other than aesthetics, which are not that interesting to look at when you're just spending most of the time staring at space. But I would never, ever list it as the worst film ever made. Because there's a lot of thought put into it. There's a lot of stuff put into it. I just can't stand it. One of the worst movies I've ever seen are movies like Baby Geniuses 2 Super Babies, or The Room, or Birdemic, or things like that are the worst because they had no budget, no good actors, nothing in it that works well. So I did not want to put Annihilation on this because it did have a good budget. It had some good actors. It had some interesting design elements. And I was like, okay, well, it's still early in the year. There's going to be some stuff that's way worse than Annihilation that comes out that I can put on this list. And with two exceptions, this was still the worst movie I saw of the year. It was the least compelling, the least interesting. It had some stuff that worked for it. Like I said, it had a good all-female cast, or mostly female cast. It had an interesting design element. It had one of the scariest creatures I've ever seen, which was this man-bear hybrid that would make humanistic noises that would call out to its prey. And it was just, that thing was nerve-wracking and terrifying. But that's only like maybe a 10-minute of the middle part of the movie. And that part is like very good. The rest of the movie is really bad. It's like, and I acknowledge part of it is I didn't go in it with the mindset. I was hoping this was going to be like Arrival, where it's taking a genre and turning it on its head and looking at it a different way and adding some new elements, and this is really not that. The director and the creators were clearly trying to do 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's not that either. This falls more into the line of Event Horizon, or where it's like we had these lofty ambitions, but we never really got to do anything with it, and we ended up with something that's not that creative or interesting. For me, the reason I would mark this so low, and the main thing that drags this down for me, is the last half hour. The last half hour of this is absolutely horrible. The majority of that last half hour is spent with Natalie Portman staring at a CGI'd monster that, while overly loud dubstep is playing, and no dialogue. It's just her staring at this creature that's silver humanoidish mass, and they're just staring at each other, and slowly we watch the humanoid mass transform until, spoilers, until it turns into her, and you're left, and then it's like, oh no, now they have to fight each other, and one of them's going to survive, and we have to, who survived, the alien or the human? And yeah, it's so annoying and loud and predictable and just really bad. The most interesting thing about this movie, besides that man-bear thing in the middle, was actually a theory that my mom popped up to really quickly into the movie. So the troop of girls enter into the alien sphere, and cuts to black, and they wake up like 2 days later, and they have no idea how they got that far in, or when they set up camp, or anything of that nature. And my mom kind of turns to me and she goes, I wonder if they're clones. And that added this whole other element to it, where it's like, because when you get to the end and you see the second clone, you're like, what if the ones we've been following aren't the real people? What if these are clones, and that's why they don't remember what happened during those 2 days, because nothing happened, they were just dropped off and set here, and this is some weird alien-like experiment, or just some weird twisted thing, or they're just trying to perfect why humans are the way they are, or it's just a weird thing. Like, this concept has so much more layers, and so much more theory, and so much more interesting things, And none of that's in the movie. That's literally just my mom having a random guess at, hey, what if the people we think are the humans are actually clones? And that adds way more layers to this. And I would love to say that makes this movie better, except no, because this movie's still boring as spit. And still has the stupid 20-minute dubstep sequence at the end. Yeah. No, this one for me is a lot like Fate of the Furious was for me in 2017, where it's like, is this the worst thing ever made? Probably not. But it's a movie that is stupid and pisses me off, and I have to talk about it. Which is why I had to put it on the list. So, yeah, that was my number 2. Dishonorable mentions. Oh, we have a few. There's not a lot. There's a few. A lot of them are fall under the same line of these never had the potential to really be great. They had a concept that could only be taken so far and couldn't go much further beyond that. The perfect example is Proud Mary. Proud Mary is an action drama about a hit woman who takes in this kid who is whose father was one of her victims, and tries to raise him, and also trying to get out of the mob so she can raise the kid. And it's like, is the movie okay? But it never really had the potential to be great. It never did. And then other ones that fall into that would be Blockers, Game Night, Billionaire Boys Club, Early Man, which was a stop-motion animation by the guys that did Wallace and Gromit. Yeah. Truth or Dare. And even the new Tomb Raider movie kind of fell in that, where it's like, this was never going to be amazing. It was very unlikely that any of these were going to be breakout stuff. They're just, releasing movies with these people's name on it because we know we can sell money for them. We had a bunch of bad made-for-TV movies, because you always do. There's a couple that really stood out, though, as being particularly bad. I would, Marrying Mr. Darcy from Lifetime was really bad. It's like a modern day... There was Meeting Mr. Darcy, which was the first one, which was a modern day Pride and Prejudice sequel that was already bad to begin with. And then there was this one, which is even worse. There was Santa Jaws, which is about a shark with a Santa hat that has magic powers and goes on a killing spree on this Christmas Day. It's really stupid. Disney Channel's Zombies, which was just High School Musical, but with zombies. I will admit, though, on Zombies, the dance scene's really good. The dance sequences are worth a look at, whereas the rest of the movie's just utter garbage. But the worst made-for-TV movie I saw. Not only the worst made-for-TV movie of 2018, arguably the worst movie of 2018, period. If I hadn't set up the rules that I didn't count TV movies, this would definitely be my number 1. And probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen is Nightmare Shark. Nightmare Shark is about a group of people who've all had random, different time. They were not all part of one event. They were all part of different shark attacks where they were the only survivor. And now a shark is hunting their nightmares, killing them off one by one. And the shark is very, very, very badly animated. And the acting is horrible, and you can tell this movie's made on zero budget because it's all filmed in a house. And it's not, well, it's got bad sound, bad acting, bad directing, bad editing, but every single thing about this movie is god-awful. It's all about a psychologist who's trying to help them get to terms with the tragedy they suffered, and then proceeds to drug them all into a state that lets the nightmare shark kill them, and the nightmare shark traces them through their dreams, through sand and snow, and... like, if the entire thing had been set in the dream world, and we just saw mostly that, I might have given this a little bit more of a pass. But no, majority of this is just sitting in a room in a house. It's awful. It is one of the worst things I've ever seen. I honestly would say it was worse than my number 1, but that said, I have to do one that's actually theatrically released. So, my number 1 worst movie of 2018 is Life of the Party with Melissa McCarthy. Welcome back. Twice in 1 year, she's on my worst list. And I don't really like doing that to her, because Melissa McCarthy is not that bad. I don't particularly find her that funny. But I usually find something in her movies I can like. Either her performance, or the dramatic elements, or some of the storytelling, or some of the side characters. But, even Happy Time Murders, I found some stuff that was kind of interesting or kind of worked. There is literally nothing in this movie that works. The story is super predictable and uninteresting. The acting is all over the place, mostly bad acting. The characters are unlikable. There is nothing really that funny about it. There is one joke that works in the entire freaking movie, which is Melissa McCarthy is at dinner with her ex-husband and his current girlfriend, who's now going to be his fiancée. And Melissa McCarthy has been sleeping with this college student who is randomly a waiter here, and it's like, oh, son! And it turns out it's the son of the new fiancé. And she looks at Melissa McCarthy and is like, did you sleep with my son? And Melissa McCarthy went, yes, I did, and I rocked his fucking world. That's the funniest joke in the entire thing. It made me laugh for 3 seconds. It's like, yeah. But, yeah, no. It's just uninteresting, uninspired. It really feels like Melissa McCarthy is becoming Adam Sandler. And I don't mean good Adam Sandler. I mean current Adam Sandler, where it's like you're just doing movies to make a paycheck, or to go on vacation, or something stupid like that. She's literally just turning out these movies to make a paycheck. She's not doing it because she has any interest of being funny anymore, or doing anything super fun or comedic. I will say, to this movie's credit, it didn't hit all of the stereotypes I expected it to. It hit most of them. But I was pleasantly surprised that her daughter, who was going to the same college as Melissa McCarthy's character wasn't really that pissed that her mother was there, or embarrassed, or didn't want her to be there. Like, that was an interesting evolution for that. Because that's what I expected. And then you expect the other girl students to be mean to the older lady. And it's like, no, they all super like her, and they all are very friendly with her and include her in all these events. It's like, okay, that's unexpected. That was a nice twist to see. That said, those two are not enough to make up for how boring, dry, unimaginative, uninteresting this movie is. You make it a big deal that the entire reason that she's back in college is because she wants to get her degree, and she wants to make something of her life, and she wants to continue her life from where it got left off when she got pregnant and got a kid. But instead of studying and going to school, she spends most of her time having sex and partying and drinking and doing other things. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to support you staying in college and scamming these people out of money to be able to pay for the college because you want to, what? Have more sex with underage boys? Or just barely legal boys? Like, it didn't feel like there was a good message to this, which seems like a movie that could have had a very good, easy message. But it's just lifeless, dull hunk of a movie that, thankfully, a lot of people, it didn't do well. Thankfully, it sank and no one went to see it, because this one didn't deserve being seen. So yeah, those are my top 5 worst movies of 2018. Is there some that you disagree with? Is there others that I probably should have put on this list, but I didn't? I looked at a couple other people's lists before I decided to do this one, and there was a lot of movies that got put on those lists that I really don't think warranted being on the lists. Like Jurassic World, like Pacific Rim Uprising, like Venom. Like, none of these are bad enough to warrant being, like, the worst movies of the year. Like, you guys have seen... And that's weird, because the people that are reviewing these, some of them have seen some of the worst movies out there. They had to watch the third 50 Shades of Grey. They had to watch, Gotti and these low-budget indie films that were never going to do well. And yet, some reason they're like, oh, the worst movie I saw this year was Venom. I'm like, okay. No, I completely disagree. Venom's fine. It's not great. It's not horrible. I will acknowledge that Jurassic World is bad. But, anyway. So yeah, that was my top 5 worst movies of 2018. I will be doing a top 5 best movies of 2018 in the following week or so. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you soon. Bye.